Kim has been wonderfully keeping track. So if we go back to '09, which we actually go back to, we used to have summer and winter dues. Winter would be for snow plowing, and summer would be for road maintenance and culvert work. We've had a long history of these individuals not paying going back to '09. Some of the seasonal people would pay for summer work, some of them, but would not pay for winter work. And when you're having a road, you need to maintain a road. And so what we've moved to as an association is we just have one fee, so that you pay for it, because this last winter, our fees for plowing were almost over double. And so it's really put a burden on the 18, because everyone does get their road plowed. I mean, it's a little hard to, like, for example, one of the members who don't pay, who lives here full-time, is right as you enter Kelly Hill Road. So there's not an option of not plowing there. And so the rest of them get this wonderful benefit of the 18 of us who contribute.
And that's, did you look up the date? Is it July
30th.
30th? Okay.
23rd.
23rd would
Third.
be the last regularly scheduled board
Fourth
meeting.
Tuesday is 23rd.
Okay.
Thank you.
For the public hearing. Okay.
Oh, during our regularly scheduled meeting.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Commissioners, I would, we've had a recent uptick in interest in SGSDs, and we're still working on bringing a final policy to the board for consideration. And the plan is to bring the policy that's been discussed in committee to Committee of the Whole on the 16th of July. So I would recommend that we have that policy finalized before we take any action on forming SGSDs, although, as Brady has pointed out, the statutory authority for you to make a determination to do this, and the authority to set this up, and the authority for the residents to request that you can consider this is all already there. But having that policy set up before we authorize another SGSD would be helpful. That being said, there's nothing saying we couldn't do that on the 23rd, except that I know that we're not going to have a full board for that meeting on the 23rd. I know that Commissioner DeShaw has a commitment that will keep him from being here for a good portion of that meeting. So the requested date of the 23rd and/or pushing into August don't really change the ability to deliver this administratively. There are still other questions out there that we're researching related to qualified resident or qualified voter, or who it is that is counted. As Ms. Freeman reported, it depends on how you count them. And clarifying who gets counted and how this gets done is a part of clarifying the policy, and we do have that work out. So I would just suggest that the 23rd might be early to set this hearing, because we may not have everything administratively in place to be able to do that, and we also won't have a full board on that day.
Could we have the hearing and then not take action? Would that, I mean, you're suggesting we should hold off on the hearing until we have
I'm suggesting
policy
that you
in place?
consider that. You could certainly hold the hearing and not make a decision.
Yeah.
But then again, you would be holding a hearing without the full board here, because Commissioner DeShaw will not be here that morning.
As representatives, do you feel any burden with changing it to the first meeting in August?
We could do the first meeting in August, and then I think that would be fine, as long as we give some people a little bit more time. I think the question, Jeff, that you raised about, who is a voting member, most of the people who, I think the 17 or 18 of us, I think most of us are full-time residents here in Cook County. So just for you to know that. And I think the other aspect, too, is that when you look at the document that exists, there's a variety of ways in which you can set that up. And what we felt was most equitable for the entire group was the ability to do it by just sharing the amount equally among the owners, rather than looking at the size of the lot or anything like that. We're a very equitable group of people. We just felt that if you look at the need for for this that's defined by statute. I think because over the years, we have not had individuals paying, and if you look back 10 years, just, the overall cost that's outstanding from this group is over $6,000, which is significant, be able to do the repairs on the road that needs to be done. So I think, it's good that you have a clarification of your policy, but I also think it's really critical to understand that the majority of the people who signed this, we live here full-time. We're not like a lot of road associations that have part-time people, majority.
Good point. What do you come up with the date on there? August?
13th would be the first meeting.
On that day, would we also be able to have both a public hearing and a decision?
You could. We would have a resolution prepared
Okay.
in case they're ready to make a decision.
Okay, I think that would be really helpful, because in pushing it back then allows us to do two things at the same time. So if we could move forward with that, I think our board, would you guys be okay with that? All right. We're a very equitable, happy group, so we just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page together. Okay?
I think it shows, too, that we already have, is it 5 or 6 subordinate districts?
6.
At least 6, yeah.
At least 6, okay. And I know in my West End, I'm hearing folks who would like to do this also. So I think it's good that we have some guidelines and we put something together. I don't know in a neighborhood if you have a small number of people, if that works, or here you have a large group of people who are concerned.
Right.
So I don't know if it's a numbers game, or if it's just they want to have this service and they're willing to pay for it, and a certain amount will or won't, and you go with the wills.
Well, I think the issue, when the term voluntary, as one of the members said at our meeting, well, I think voluntary means if you want to, you do. And we take a look at voluntary meaning that we're all adults and we're not going to force people, but we would think that when you have a community of people who are living on the road, that you share that responsibility without enforcement. And I guess voluntary means different things, but if you don't have to pay, that's a nice term when everyone else does.
Okay. Anything else, Brady?
We need a motion to set that date and time.
Is there a time that would be best during that meeting?
Oftentimes, Commissioner, we set 9 o'clock.
Okay, I'll make a motion to set a public hearing date for August 13th at 9 o'clock for proposed subordinate service district for Kelly's Hill area.
Support.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, too, you
Thank you.
folks.
Madam Chair, the second item is a request to reallocate the 2018 payment in lieu of taxes payment. This is the money we received about a year ago that we received some information on from the federal government that we were receiving a PIL payment that was larger than normal, a one-time event, but we weren't given specifics as to, we have actually 3 statutes under which we're paid, and there was some reason to believe that it might have been some combination of those. Couldn't get an answer, neither could any of the counties in the state that looked into this. But in the last 2 months, we've now received the Secure Rural Schools payment for 2017 and for 2018, which were the 2 payments that I thought were likely part of that large payment last year. As you can see, what I handed out this morning, what was in your packet, is very small and incomplete. It didn't have the last line. So in the last line of what I handed out this morning, it shows how the $761,000 would be broken out under I call it our basic PILT payment. This is the original PILT payment from statute 6902. Under this one, we pay a portion to each of the 3 towns based on the acreage within each of those towns. So 50-some thousand would go to those towns, and 701,000 goes to the county. You can see on that list what our payments have been in the recent past. It's always in the low 200,000s, because this is a formula. And so it doesn't change very much from year to year, because it's based on acreage and a formula. So this is why it was so unusual last year. But I checked with St. Louis, and they are also doing the same thing. They've come to the same conclusion since we finally did get the secure rural schools payment, again without any notice or explanation of it. They also believe that that was then not part of this payment, and that we both feel secure enough to go ahead, assume it's the 6902 payment, and make this allocation as we normally would. So I'd ask for approval to make that allocation. You can see the 3 payments to the town and the one to the county, then to be used as in lieu of tax payment for any lawful purpose.
Okay. Well, it's been a long process, from going to Washington DC to letters and to everything that we can, meeting, in Duluth and all of that. At least we have a portion already secured, so that part is good. Questions or comments?
Yeah, with the lack of communication from the feds, and just, I think we'll be talking more about the future with the Ty Blatnick. I'm just still not entirely comfortable doing a whole lot with it. But I understand that we should pay out to the townships, and then,
Yeah,
this is the kind of the beginning of whatever.
This seems low risk to me at this point.
Okay.
Because the one that gave me sleepless moments had we made a decision last year, or tried to make a decision, is the secure rural schools payment is largely broken up between the highway and the school. This one, and since we know that's taken care of, this one is a small amount to the towns and the rest to the county. The third statute in that is BWCA, which none of us has, we do not believe in any way, shape, or form that it's BWCA money. So the likelihood that it is this revenue, I think, is very, very high. And the risk in divvying it out to the towns, I think, is pretty small. And you can't wait forever. I don't think anything's going to change. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I know we've been talking about this, and is there any indication of what's going to happen in the future in regards to this, this PILT money?
Well, we'll keep asking. We used to get an actual breakdown of how the calculation was made each year. So I don't know if that person retired. We keep searching. We talked to St. Louis County and their paid lobbyist, and so we're going to keep trying to track down the person who's making these calculations. They exist because these are formula payments. So if we find the right person, maybe we'll get that background that we'd like to see.
It's pretty interesting. We can't find a person to send us the money. We're wondering what's going on. But that's not for us to judge, I guess, at this point in time. I think the other thought with that, and the discussions that I've been involved with the Ty Blatnick, there's been a couple, and I know that Jeff is going to report on the latest from yesterday, hopefully. But I think at some point in time, we need to discuss how we're going to deal with these kinds of payments. Or do we do it just yearly? Because things are rather uncertain right now if we don't know the criteria which this is made.
Yeah, but it's largely out of our hands at this
Right.
level.
But how we use it is in our hands. I guess that's what I'm referring to.
That's kind of where my discomfort is too, is
But-
the uncertainty of the future and how to plan.
I think we need to accept it and distribute the payments, but I think somewhere down the line, we have to talk about this in a broader context of, you know, how do we deal with these pill funds? And I don't know if it's a policy or strategy, but a discussion.
Yeah, and I think without a policy, I think we did the responsible thing. We waited because it could have been secure rural schools, and now we know that it wasn't, and
Best decide on,
that took the mystery out of that.
best decide on caution.
Yeah.
Right.
The in lieu of taxes, Grand Portage Indian Reservation is 49,000 acres. Does the county get paid for that not being on the tax roll with this?
No, that's not part of the acreage.
Okay.
Well, we'll proceed with caution, I guess. And budget meeting is today, and so we'll get more info too and work
Well,
on that.
I move that we accept this payment in lieu of taxes and distribute the money accordingly.
A second?
Any further questions or comments?
Yes. So this money now will go into the general fund?
Yeah, in fact, it's there now. We just haven't designated as such and made any distributions as called for to the towns, so we'll just, the amount is there, it'll just, part of it will move to the towns. But we'll use it in our, if we need to, in our calculations for the 2020 levy.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carried.
Madam Chair, the third item is, speaking of unknowns, is the 2018 federal equipment grant. This is a grant application that the board approved, the application on February 26, 2018. And this was a joint application of the North Shore Ski and Run Club and the Superior Cycling Association. Tim Kennedy and is here today to speak to this. And so this is a $51,336 grant, Federal Recreational Trails Program. Why this has taken so long is that in the past, these have required a Buy America requirement, but we've always gotten a waiver for small grants such as this, so that we haven't had to get that certification from the manufacturers, dealers. This year, they went a step further and required that it be American steel and it be certified, and so far, there's been no waiver provided for even small grants such as this. So the club has been out beating the bushes, trying to get that information from the manufacturers and the dealers, and been successful in two cases. Two of the pieces of equipment, it's in your packet, have certified the American steel, but the others, as you can see in here, there's a whole list of equipment, several items on page 185. So two of those got certification, the others have not, and I think the letter in the packet from Honda is pretty representative of the reason. Honda lists at least 30 places where they get their pieces of equipment for their equipment. So their distribution sources are very wide. They're all around the world, and they simply either cannot find that information or won't take the time. It would be expensive to certify as to where all of their parts come from. Anything more to add? Oh, I'm sorry, Chris is here too, Chris O'Brien.
Yeah, I think the only other provision would be that the the clock is running on using the funds. I believe December is the deadline for final use of the funds.
So again, there's some risk here because they have not given a waiver for this, but the risk is that there's an audit and that there's in some order for the funds to be returned. We haven't seen anything like that in the past. If it's our state auditors, they could audit it. They typically do not reach down to this level for their audits. So there is some risk of that. In the meantime, there could be a waiver before the end of the year. It's still possible. It just hasn't happened yet. So the risk is about 14,000 of it. We do have the certification. The rest is at some kind of risk. We do have funds, recreation funds that we receive. We've got 17,000 that we did not spend last year. We get the state funds, part of which is for parks and recreation. We'll get another 37,000 this year. So if we held that pending the use of this grant, that would be a way to cover any potential on calling back those funds.
How long would we need to hold it? Are you expecting some verification by the end of the year, perhaps? Or how long would we hold this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. And I think the issue is, we really don't know, because the companies that, we've been trying to get these letters of compliance or certification from, really are just saying, we're just not going to do that. I mean, Honda is not going to provide that letter. They said, we just have too many suppliers that, just made with American steel. We can say made in America, but we can't say made with American steel, because there's parts suppliers are so varied and spread out, and they don't know which suppliers actually provide the parts for the various pieces of equipment, and it's, they've just kind of said, we're not going to provide that. So we're kind of, in a situation where, if we're going to use this money to purchase the equipment, which, everybody thinks it's a good idea. I mean, they've given us the grant, but, somebody might be on the hook. And, my thought is that if, there is an audit, I mean, if there are county recreation funds that could be used for that, that certainly seems a reasonable way to cover that potential. I mean, the other is, there could be maybe some funding from both of our clubs too, but, again, we're not, flush with cash, so, I mean, that would be a real challenge for us to be able to do that. These equipment grants have been pretty critical to help us, do the job we do in taking care of the trails that we maintain. And our hope is that, this can all be resolved with a variance letter, but, we just really don't have any control over that or know if that's even a possibility.
I think
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, I'm wondering if we can hear from the club representatives a bit about their efforts to seek out these letters that certify American steel was used. Maybe what the results of that were, and how this affects your ability to purchase the equipment that the grant has authorized purchase of. I think it's important that we hear from them how difficult to impossible it's been to comply with this piece of the grant agreement before the board makes a decision that has some risk.
I can address that from the Ski and Run Club. The main piece of equipment that's in question for us is a side-by-side John Deere Gator. We have the other equipment. We have a grooming tool from Yellowstone that was where the manufacturer said that they were able to provide the documentation. We have been trying with John Deere since we received approval of the grant, which is about a year ago, to get both working with John Deere corporate and with the dealer in Duluth to try to get documentation that's in alignment or in compliance with the requirements. And We have gotten as far as being able to submit documentation that the equipment is assembled in the U.S., but like Honda, John Deere, we're basically, we're caught as, we're pawns in the middle of a struggle between global manufacturers and these this is a federally funded program, so the Department of Transportation provides the funds, and we're caught as pawns in the middle of this battle where the global manufacturers are kind of digging their heels in and saying, we run global supply chains, we're not going to, we're going to run our business the way we run our business, and we're not going to provide this kind of documentation. So really the risk to us is that we miss the opportunity to purchase this equipment. This would be important for the club in a couple of ways. First, this particular piece of equipment, the John Deere Gator, would replace one of the aging two-stroke snowmobiles that we currently use for grooming, so it's capable of replacing that for winter grooming. Equally important, it gives us much greater capability to use. It has a dump bed in the back, and it gives us much greater capability to maintain and improve the system of trails in the summertime. So right now, one of the things, for example, that we can't do very well is to move fill to some of the farther parts of the trail network on the pincushion trails where we've seen some very serious erosion. This would give us the ability to do that much more readily. I would add, as a in terms of the risk to the county, in addition to the, we would, I think that the probability of an audit, I have no way to assess the probability of an audit. This is my first time through this rodeo. But I think that we also have the option, if that were to happen, of selling the equipment, and then so the amount that we would then need to deal with would be a small portion of the purchase price. That would be a decision that we would approach the county with and say, here's the recreational value of this piece of equipment in maintaining the trails at Pincushion. If we would obviously lose that capability if we were to sell the equipment, but we could make that decision down the road if the program were audited.
Thank you on that. So the snowmobile would be for grooming in the winter, and
Yeah, it's a John Deere Gator. It has tracks on it, so it actually it works. It can pull the grooming equipment, so it basically would replace one of the 20-plus-year-old snowmobiles that we're currently using for that.
thank you.
And it would and in addition, we would be able to use it year round for the other for the trail work in the summertime.
Questions, comments? Commissioner DeShawn?
On what other county clubs use this recreation fund?
What's been used for in recent years is some of those other entities, like the school summer program, both here and in Tofty. And when the city was asking us for golf course funding, et cetera, so that's where the use has been. The swimming pool, when we were supporting this city's swimming pool debt, that's been the recent year's use.
Okay.
So right now, we haven't identified any direct use. And just regarding if it was if this is simply a state audit, because the state does audit for federal programs, that risk would be next year. They would finish up their 2019 audit about this time of year, the end of June, July, so we'd know by that time. And they may, I don't know if they would have any information as to whether the federal government itself would come out and audit a small county over a small bill like this. That's completely unknown, but seems highly unlikely.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Mills?
I like that, and this isn't really what's on the table, but I like that, you're working with multiple groups and having the trailers and being able to move it, that kind of flexibility is really smart. I do have concerns about the risks, certainly, and But it's good to hear about those recreation funds and, just having those two totals, the 17,000 and 37,000, and subtracting that from the grant total, it leaves things pretty close to covering it, and then also hearing the potential of selling them if push comes to shove there. It's another security there that makes me more comfortable with this. I am curious how two of the manufacturers can claim American Steel, but what's that?
Well, I might be able to explain that.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, I
but
think-
the others, I guess the others are much larger.
I think that's the issue, is that
Yeah.
they're much more global, whereas
Yeah.
the Rokon and the Yellowstone Groomers are pretty much, US-based and small manufacturers that know where their materials come from. Their suppliers are pretty predictable. And that's, even with our utility trailers, they were supposed to be steel trailers. We changed that. They're going to be aluminum trailers now. So they'll meet the standard, but.
They're lighter that way.
Well, but you have to make some adjustments based on that. So the risk really isn't for the entire amount of the grant.
Thank you.
It's for only a couple portions of that grant, for really the Gator and the Honda ATV.
And so have you looked at other manufacturers then for either of those, and similar
Same
scenario? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
All right, are we ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the grant to be used by the North Shore Ski and Run Club and Spear Cycling Association.
I'll second.
Any further questions or comments?
Is there, yes, please.
I was gonna kind of go down the road where Molly was talking about, is maybe to table it and get some more background on it before we gamble the county's money away.
Yeah, I was going to ask if there was anything we needed to do as far as setting up that contingency with either the recreation funds or selling equipment.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Mills and Commissioner DeShaw, I very much appreciate your hesitation here, and I think it's important that you make a well-considered decision whenever there's risk involved. Here's what I can tell you. We, up to today's date, we've kind of been gathering information from the club representatives, because Brady was aware of this issue of the risk, and the club reps have been very upfront about it too, and we've asked them to make every effort they can to comply with this part of the grant requirements. We've asked them to, get documentation and to provide documentation of their efforts. At this point, I'm not sure what else we could do to reduce the risk further. I think it's a good idea to mitigate it by having some funds identified and holding those funds for a period of time should the audit occur. But and certainly you can table it for another meeting to think about it more thoroughly. But in weighing the risk versus the benefit, it's my advice that you could probably go forward today. That I think that it's been described well that this is our local unit of government. Our local clubs are set in the middle of kind of a power struggle that is much greater, and it's unlikely that they'll receive some scrutiny. If they were to receive some scrutiny, I believe that we have a good argument that it's we have an impossibility defense, essentially. It's impossible to follow through with the conditions of the grant to purchase the equipment that we've promised we would use the funds for, while also complying with this other condition. So that's been my analysis.
Okay, thank you.
So is there anything formal that we need to do in regards to the recreation funds? Or,
I would recommend, just add setting aside recreation funds pending an audit, pending, let's say, the
completion
the
of the,
completion of the 2019 state audit.
And should we
And we
also,
should know something by that time, and,
should we also put in the potential sale of it? Do we need to say anything about that? Or if we spend this money, the
I-
county,
I think they've made that offer, and,
I'm just talking about formally, any formal
I-
need.
it's up to you, but I guess I wouldn't.
Well, the other option could be, if we do use the county recreation funds, if we do need to end up doing that, whatever reason, worst case, that equipment could be used by other clubs as well, potentially, not just Ski and Run Club here and Cycling Association, but I don't know how to formally do that or put that into the right language. But I guess with my motion, I'd like to move to amend, setting aside the recreation funds pending the completion of the audit and,
Yeah, so designating recreation funds in the event of an audit.
thank you.
And, yeah, we'll figure out the exact amount.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner DeShawn?
Is there anybody else, any other group got this grant you could talk to see where they found the equipment to buy?
Yeah, they're all in the same boat. The other clubs that have applied for the grant are similarly caught up in this power struggle. And it is holding back our ability to kind of do our work on the trails. So.
DNR is the one that administers the grants for the federal government, and they're the ones that can't really answer the questions because they don't have any really authority other than to follow through with the requirements. So other equipment grants that are happening throughout the state are all subject to these same terms, and when we're looking at buying the same type of equipment, it's the same issue for everybody. So DNR is really kind of in the middle of this, but really can't help with the response.
And what are these other groups doing when they don't have a recreational fund sitting behind them to back them?
I guess we're not in contact with the other grant recipients to know how they're dealing with that. I'm sure they're all scrambling on an individual basis.
Any other questions, comments? So we have a motion which was amended to accept the $51,000 grant from the Federal Trails and Recreation for the Ski and Cycle Trails, North Shore Ski and Run Club, with the provision of the risk of the two $17,000 and $37,000, that we would set that aside in case something would happen. Is that correct? Is that
Yeah.
what you wanted to say?
Yes, thank you. And I don't know if it's also necessary to say that I'd like to, if we do need to spend that recreation money, I would like other groups to use it as well. So I don't know how ownership works there or anything, but
Okay,
that's my intention.
okay, got that? All righty, are we ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tight spot there.
Yeah. Okay, Jeff, we'll turn it over to you for some items on the agenda here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item is approve job description and score change. The recommendation is to approve suggested changes to administrative assistant position as reviewed and recommended by Personnel Committee, administrative assistant that works in the administrator's office. Summary, the administrative assistant has taken on additional responsibility with both the addition of managing the iCompass agenda software and coordinating the users of that group, and with the change in our PIO, Emergency Management Director, returning to an Emergency Management Director, with the coordination of communications through the Communications Committee and other department heads. Those job changes you can see on the attached job description. The things highlighted in yellow are where we identified and changed responsibility in a relatively significant manner. And then related to comments made this morning, I would go back to the employee handbook on page 19, which is not in there, but I want to provide the context. The Administrator's Office has a job description on file for each county job classification. Job classifications provide an outline of job duties, lines of authority, and minimum qualifications and requirements. In accordance with the Minnesota Pay Equity Act, each job description is rated on the basis of skill, effort, responsibility, and working conditions. In 2017, we approved the Keystone classification system to review our jobs and to grade those, so that is how they are reviewed. An important element here is job descriptions. Job description review may be initiated by any of the following. There's an automatic review for a new position or vacancy. That's a standard practice. Commissioner Mills and Dukirk are aware that when we have a vacancy that's approved by the board, then that position description automatically goes on the next Personnel Committee agenda, and it is reviewed. The department head or supervisor would make recommendations as to whether that's still current or whether it's outdated and needs to be looked at. Job descriptions may be initiated by a countywide job classification study, as we did in 2016, 2017. They can be initiated following major changes in the duties and or responsibilities of a position, which is the case with this position, or upon the request of the employee, the department head, or administration. So reviewing job descriptions is a regular function of the Administrator's Office, Human Resources, and the Personnel Committee. We've been doing it, we have to. Pay equity requires that we understand our pay structure, and that's based on having a good understanding of the jobs and the job descriptions in the organization. So and then the other comment about a job classification just being a pay increase, that's not necessarily true. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. Practice related to a job description being reclassified is that the person would go up to the step on the new classification just above where they are. If the step just above where they are is 2 pennies an hour more than what they're currently making, that's what they go to. If it's almost a full step, then that's what they go to. So in this case, it's almost a full step, but that is following past practice. And that's laid out in the handbook. So if there are any questions about that, I would take them now.
Questions?
Do we have any other executive office assistants in the building?
We do. Sarah Hadley is a 150 executive administrative assistant. And we have 140s and we have 130s within our receptionist, office worker, and executive assistant positions. So a 130, 140, or a 150 are consistent with our support staff positions that we have in office positions. The primary elements that changed are the responsibility to coordinate the work of people who are classed at a higher level than what the position was previously responsible for doing. And that's also why the executive administrative assistant up in Human Services is classed at that level.
Everything is in flux at times, you know. We have a shuffle in this department or a shuffle in that, or someone retires or whatever, so we have to take a new look at it and plan accordingly to what needs to be done.
Yeah, and Commissioner Mills can attest to the fact that our Personnel Committee meetings get long, and we do have to prioritize the issues that we discuss based on the emergent and urgent needs of the organization and how they change specifically when our personnel changes.
Yeah, I would just add that I really do appreciate the personnel committee's work and looking at positions as they vacate or as they change, and just trying to stay on top of what can we do and how can we be the most efficient. And I just think it's really critical to keep that, keep a finger on that flux, to continually evaluate. And I do appreciate the summary financial implications, showing the difference between the public information officer drop and this salary increase, just to get a little perspective. I know that the duties, overlapped a little bit there, and so I appreciate that. Second.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Commissioner reports. Any reports? Meetings to note?
I will be here for like the first half an hour of the meeting on July 23rd. I have a commitment with the Grand Portage Band to go to Isle Royale, and I believe Administrator Cadwell will be going with me. And when I get the paperwork, I will bring it to you
Okay,
and share it with you. It's a pretty important thing that's going on out there. And
okay. Very good. I would just have a comment in regards to the packet that we received from the Tofty Ranger District. I met with Ellen, the Tofty Ranger, yesterday. This is quite a big packet of information that they're now going to be working on their planning in their district, which is a landscape project. She will be setting up, and I think she may be calling Jeff, we'll be setting up a meeting, maybe we could do committee of the whole with it, to further have her explain to us what that all means. She showed me a map, there's various areas within the district, and it'll be good to know what they're planning for the future down that end of the county. Okay.
Madam Chair, I attended the AOA meeting last Wednesday, and there have been conversations about getting a Head Start program going in Cook County. I think, again, it used to be, is my memory, but that's not going to be happening this year. But there is, it was a good meeting, I guess they had, not aside from this main AOE meeting, and so those conversations will be continuing next year. And that's Head Start is for getting children ready for school, younger toddlers and such. Also attended the hospital district meeting on Thursday, and it was an interesting presentation about the cost of healthcare and just really looking at that. And then there's continuing conversations about the pharmacy options in the county. With the closure of the one, the second pharmacy is pretty swamped, and so hospital is keeping a very close eye on that and looking for solutions.
And I attended the celebration last night of the clinic, Sawtooth Clinic, celebrating 40 years here. We had a little talk by Dr. McDonald, who's still around, and then a recognition of Rita, the administrator, who, after 38 years, has said she's going to retire. So we look forward to a new person coming in there. Anything else?
Madam Chair, I'd ask a question. Brady, are we still holding the public hearing for Camp 20 SGSD on the 9th of July, or has that been postponed?
I'm going to ask to postpone that.
Okay.
I could do it on that day. You could do it today, but I was going to ask to postpone it to the 23rd, but we'll talk to them in light of what we talked to today, and maybe they'll move it to August, or request to move it to August. they are in, I think, given the size of it, they're more inclined to want to push to get it done, but
Okay, anything else?
Move to adjourn?
We are adjourned.
So I always have a question when these issues come up. These numbers don't add up to that.
Oh,
Is there anything else?
that was given by the feds, the Forest Service?
So you can bring them. I'll just bring them. Yeah.